Hi there, I'm Patrick. Today I'm covering influencers whose final moments played out live on stream. And the worst part was that not a single audience watching could help. From a girl who got killed by a ring light mid-stream, to a guy who tested a cheap charger live just to prove a point, making their last stream the most disturbing thing you'll hear today. It was February 14th, 2019. And a ring light cast a flat white glow across a cluttered desk in a studio apartment in a mid-sized city in Ohio, where a man sat in front of a camera surrounded by opened shipping boxes, tangled cables, and a row of off-brand power banks lined up along the edge of the desk, like products in a store display. Caius Petratus was 27 years old, worked part-time at a phone repair shop, and ran a tech review channel from his apartment. His whole thing was budget electronics, like the cheaper the better, and pretty much all his money came from affiliate links. Every product he featured had a purchase link in the description, and every time a viewer bought one, he got a cut. His channel wasn't huge, around 15,000 subscribers, but a handful of his power bank and charger reviews had unexpectedly blown up and drove most of his affiliate sales. Those few videos alone had made the affiliate income his main source of money outside the repair shop. He had his affiliate earnings dashboard bookmarked and honestly checked it all the time, sometimes even during streams. He once accidentally showed it on screen, and a viewer screenshotted his commission numbers before he could delete the clip. That screenshot is what made this one click for me, because it means his audience already knew this was about money. And he kept going anyway. Over the weeks before the incident, viewers had started leaving comments about the products overheating. One person said a power bank they bought through his link got so hot, it literally warped the plastic on their nightstand. Caius brushed them off on stream, saying it was probably a defective unit or the wrong adapter. He never pulled a single link. From what I found going through his old streams, he got more defensive about the products the more people pushed back. And I think that tells you where his head was at, because the money was more real to him than the complaints. That evening, during a live stream, a viewer posted in the chat that their power bank had started smoking while charging overnight and nearly caught fire. The chat kinda started turning on him after that. Caius got visibly irritated. He grabbed one of the power banks from behind his monitor, tore it open on stream, plugged it in, and held it up to the camera. He told people to watch, that nothing was going to happen, then left it plugged in on the desk and kept talking. Roughly 4 minutes later, the unit began to swell. Viewers said you could actually see the plastic casing starting to puff up on camera before he even noticed. The lithium cell inside entered thermal runaway, and the casing ruptured. A sharp pop followed by a burst of flames and superheated electrolyte fluid that sprayed across the desk and onto his hands, arms, and face. He fell backward off his chair. Viewers heard him hit the floor, and then a sound that nobody in the chat could describe the same way twice. The stream kept running. Smoke filled the frame. I need you to understand the timing on this one. 4 minutes from when he plugged it in to when it blew, and he spent those 4 minutes telling people they were wrong. A neighbor in the building smelled smoke and called 911. Paramedics found him on his apartment floor with really bad chemical and thermal burns all over his hands, forearms, and the left side of his face and neck. The electrolyte fluid from the ruptured cell had caused deep chemical burns that kept damaging tissue even after the fire was out. He was transported to a regional burn center. Infection set in across the burn sites over the following days. He died 4 days later. The medical examiner determined the cause of death to be sepsis secondary to infected chemical and thermal burns from a lithium battery thermal runaway event. The product was traced to an overseas manufacturer with no U.S. safety certification. The affiliate platform took his links down within a week, but the crazy part is that investigators found the exact same products still being sold by other sellers on the same site. The screenshot of his affiliate dashboard was entered into the case file during the family's lawsuit against the manufacturer. So this next one is the one that made me the most uncomfortable during research. Because she wasn't reckless and she wasn't stupid. She was just desperate for something to work, and she put herself somewhere no one should have been. It was July 3rd, 2019, and the parking lot of a mid-size activewear company's office building sat mostly empty on a Sunday evening in a commercial district outside Phoenix, Arizona, where the temperature had dropped from a daytime high near 110 to the low 90s, and the streetlights along the access road had just come on. Maricela Quintanilla was 23 years old, unemployed, living with her older sister in a suburb outside the city. She had been trying to build an influencer career for about 2 years with nothing to show for it. She had this spreadsheet on her phone of every single brand she ever messaged, like color-coded by whether they even responded. And out of over 200 DMs, not one of them turned into anything. Her sister later said Maricela talked about sponsorships constantly and measured everything by follower counts she didn't have. She had about 1,100 followers. That spreadsheet is the thing from this one I spent the most time thinking about, because 200 messages with nothing coming back tells you she wasn't lazy, she was grinding, it just wasn't working. And that's what pushed her into doing something like this. Her idea was to camp outside the activewear company's headquarters until they noticed her. She basically set up camp on the public sidewalk just outside the company's property line, tent, folding chair, ring light, the whole setup. Security approached her on the first day, but since she was technically on public property, they couldn't force her to leave. A building manager warned her she was welcome to stay on the sidewalk, but couldn't step onto company grounds. She started live streaming on the first afternoon. She would stay until the brand gave her a deal or security made her leave. Her follower count climbed from 1,100 to nearly 4,000 over the first 2 days. People in chat were literally sending her food delivery orders and hyping her up to keep going. And the numbers were honestly the most engagement she had ever gotten on anything. She stayed a second night, then a third. On the third night, around 1:30 in the morning, the area was completely dark except for her ring light and the street lights along the access road. She was just sitting in the folding chair talking to chat, maybe like 12 people watching at that hour. 2 figures approached from the edge of the parking lot. Viewers later said the chat went quiet when they appeared on screen. One of them said something the microphone didn't fully pick up. She stood up. The second one moved toward her equipment, and she stepped between them. What happened next took less than 10 seconds. One of them shoved her. She went backward, off balance, and the back of her head struck the concrete curb at the edge of the sidewalk. You could hear it on the stream. The 2 figures grabbed what they could carry and ran. She did not get up. The stream kept running. 12 viewers watched an empty folding chair and a sidewalk, and nobody moved on screen. I watched the last few minutes of that stream during research, and the thing that hit me hardest wasn't the shove, it was after. Because she's lying just off the edge of the frame, and you can almost see her shoes, and nothing is happening, and nobody is coming. And it's 1:30 in the morning in a parking lot. A viewer in the chat called 911 and gave the company's name and location. Paramedics got there within about 15 minutes and found her unresponsive on the sidewalk right next to all her stuff. She was transported to a trauma center with a severe impact to the back of her skull. Imaging revealed a massive epidural hematoma. Emergency surgery was performed, but the pressure buildup had already caused irreversible damage. She never regained consciousness and died the following morning. The medical examiner determined the cause of death to be traumatic brain injury from blunt force impact to the posterior skull, consistent with a backward fall onto a raised concrete surface. 2 suspects were identified from the stream footage and arrested. The company put out a statement, but never actually said whether they knew she was out there the whole time. Her sister told a reporter she had asked Maricela to come home after the first night, but Maricela said the numbers were too good. That's the line from this story I can't get past. The numbers were too good. Because it means the thing that kept her out there wasn't delusion. It was data. The followers were actually going up for the first time in 2 years, and she finally had proof that something was working. Alright, so this next one is different from the others because there was no stunt, no challenge, no audience egging her on, just a woman alone on a lake at night doing the thing she loved, and then silence. It was August 14th, 2017, and the last light of dusk had settled over a lake in rural North Macedonia, where the water sat flat and dark between low hills, and the only sound was the occasional splash of something breaking the surface near the reeds along the eastern shore. Rebecca Stoyanova was 38 years old, a veterinary technician in a small town, divorced, lived alone. She had been streaming fishing content on weekends for about 2 years to a small but dedicated following, usually between 40 and 70 viewers. She streamed every Saturday night from the same lake, same boat, same spot near the Eastern Reeds. Viewers knew the routine. Some of them logged on every week just to hear her talk. She talked to the fish on camera, and not as a bit. She genuinely narrated to them while she reeled, apologized before unhooking them, and wished them well when she threw them back. Her sister later said the fishing streams were the only time Rebecca seemed fully relaxed. During the week, she was quiet, kept to herself, didn't socialize much outside of work. On Saturday nights, on the lake, she opened up and just let it all out, and guess what? The viewers loved it. A regular in her chat had sent her a custom sticker of a cartoon fish waving goodbye. She stuck it on her tackle box and showed it on stream every time she opened the lid. I keep going back to that sticker because it means someone out there cared enough to make it, and she cared enough to show it every single time she opened that box. And none of that made any difference when she went in the water. That night, she was streaming alone from a small aluminum boat on the lake. Her phone was just propped up against her tackle box, camera pointed at her, and the water behind her. She was not wearing a life vest. About 90 minutes into the stream, she hooked something and stood up to reel it in. The boat shifted under her weight. Her foot slipped on the wet aluminum floor. She grabbed for the gunnel with one hand, but the momentum carried her over the side and into the water. The splash was loud on the microphone. The phone stayed in the boat. Viewers heard the splash, then what sounded like her hands slapping the side of the boat. Then the water sounds just getting quieter and quieter over the next few minutes. The stream kept running. The boat drifted slowly toward the center of the lake. The camera showed the empty seat, the open tackle box with the sticker on the lid, and flat black water in every direction. No movement, no sound except the occasional creak of the aluminum hull. The stream ran for over 3 hours before the phone battery died. I watched part of the stream during research, and what made me close, it wasn't the splash or the struggle, it was the silence after, where there's nothing but the lake and the stream is still going and nobody is coming. Viewers in the chat immediately started trying to help. Several people posted emergency numbers for North Macedonia. Others tried to figure out which lake she was on based on previous streams. One viewer scrolled through her old broadcasts looking for a landmark or a road sign visible in any of her setup footage. Most of her audience was watching from other countries and couldn't identify the specific location or get through to local dispatch. A moderator contacted police in her area the following morning. Her body was recovered from the lake later that day. She went under roughly 200 feet from shore, which is honestly not that far at all. The medical examiner determined the cause of death to be freshwater drowning. There was no alcohol in her system and no indication of a medical event preceding the fall. She simply lost her footing. Her channel remained active after her death. The fishing community she built held a small online memorial, and someone pointed out the sticker on her tackle box was visible in the last frame of the stream before the battery died, and I didn't go back to check because I didn't need to. So this next one is the one I kept putting off because nobody in the chat understood what they were watching. They thought he was falling asleep. He wasn't falling asleep. It was June 5th, 2020, and the interior of a parked sedan glowed faintly from a phone mounted on the dashboard inside a single-car garage attached to a rented apartment in a mid-sized city in Georgia, where the garage door was closed and the engine was running. Devlin Prescott was 31 years old, a freelance graphic designer who lived alone and streamed late-night talking content to a small following. He streamed from his car in the garage because his apartment walls were super thin and he could hear his neighbor's TV right through the drywall. He had mentioned it on stream a few times. A regular viewer once suggested he get soundproofing panels, and Devlin said he had looked into it, but couldn't justify the cost for a stream his size. He didn't want to be the guy keeping people up. His neighbor later told investigators she had never once heard him through the wall, not once. To me, what makes this one so much worse is he was solving a problem that didn't exist. The reason he was in that car in the first place wasn't even real. Every night, same routine. He had been doing this for over 8 months. He would pull into the garage, close the door, start the engine for the AC, mount his phone on the dash, and go live. His regulars knew the whole setup. They recognized his car interior, the camera angle, the engine humming in the background, all of it. That night, the first 20 minutes of the stream were normal. He talked about a project he was finishing for a client, joked about a bad review he got on a freelance platform, and read some chat messages out loud. Nothing was off, his voice was steady, his energy was typical for a late-night stream. Then, around the 30-minute mark, his speech started to slow. Not dramatically at first. He repeated a word, paused mid-sentence, lost a thought and laughed it off. Viewers typed, "You tired?" And he said something like, "Yeah, maybe." Over the next 15 minutes, his words began running together. He stopped finishing sentences. He tried to read a chat message out loud and couldn't get through it. He rubbed his eyes. He said something about a headache, barely audible, and then stopped talking altogether. His head drifted to one side. His eyes stayed half open. He stopped responding to the chat. The chat shifted. Messages went from "you good" to "wake up" to someone typing "this doesn't look right." One viewer later told investigators he honestly just thought Devlin had taken something and passed out. Nobody in the chat connected the closed garage and the running engine to what they were seeing. A regular viewer eventually contacted a friend of Devlin's through social media, who called the police. By the time officers reached the apartment complex, located the garage, and forced the door open, Devlin had been unconscious on camera for over 20 minutes. Officers reported a strong exhaust smell immediately upon entry. They pulled him from the vehicle and began CPR in the driveway. The garage CO level, measured by the fire department, was several times above the lethal threshold. 20 minutes with the stream still live, the chat still scrolling, and the engine still running. And what gets me is everything you needed to understand what was happening was right there on the screen, and nobody put it together. He was transported to a hospital. Resuscitation efforts continued, but he never regained consciousness. He was pronounced dead the following morning. The medical examiner determined the cause of death to be carbon monoxide poisoning from vehicle exhaust in an enclosed space. The fire department measured the CO in the garage when they got there, and it was way above lethal levels. No criminal investigation was opened. The fire department issued a public safety advisory about running vehicles in enclosed spaces. His neighbor found out about the streams after his death. She told investigators she would have told him to just use the apartment if she had known. She said the walls weren't even that thin. She just had the TV on most nights and assumed he could hear it too. Neither of them had ever brought it up to the other. I need to warn you about this next one because it's the youngest person in this video, and the thing that killed her cost less than the chair she was sitting in. It was March 3rd, 2018, and the bedroom of a terraced house in a small city in southern England was lit by a single ring light clamped to the edge of a desk, where a camera was framed on a chair, a makeup mirror, and a wall covered in printed photos taped in rows. Suki Adebayo was 19 years old, worked part-time at a clothing shop, and lived with her parents. She had been building a beauty and lifestyle channel from her bedroom for about a year. Her following was small, mostly friends from school, and a few dozen people who found her through hashtags. She never went viral. She never had a brand deal. She just liked making videos, and she was getting better at it every week. She had asked for a proper ring light for her birthday, but her parents didn't really get what it was for, so they just got her a gift card instead. She used the gift card plus what she had saved from work to buy the cheapest ring light she could find online, an unbranded unit with no safety certification, no grounding, and a two-prong plug with an adapter. She mentioned on a stream once that the light kinda buzzed when it got warm, and a viewer told her she should unplug it. She said, "Yeah, I will." She didn't. I spent more time on the buzzing than anything else in this story, because someone actually told her to unplug it and she heard them, and she still didn't do it. And I can't bring myself to be angry at her for that, because she was 19 and it was the only light she had. That evening, she was doing a makeup tutorial. She had laid out her products on the desk, was talking through each step, answering questions in the chat. Roughly 20 minutes in, she reached for something off camera and knocked a glass of water. It spilled across the desk, and some of it pooled near the base of the ring light where the power cable connected. She reached down to move it with one hand, while her other hand was still resting on the metal desk frame. The floor near the base was damp from the spill. Water from the spill reached damaged wiring near the base of the ring light while she was touching the metal desk frame. Viewers saw her body go rigid for a moment. Then she fell sideways off her chair and out of frame. The stream kept running. The ring light stayed on. The chat went quiet for a few seconds. Then messages started coming in, asking what happened. Nobody could reach her. The stream ran for over an hour, just an empty chair and music still playing from her laptop. Her mother found her when she came upstairs to check on her before going to bed. She later told investigators she opened the door and saw the ring light still on and Suki on the floor beside the chair. She didn't understand what had happened. She called her husband up and he called 999. 60 minutes between the fall and someone opening that door, and her mother was downstairs the whole time, one floor away, and I haven't been able to stop thinking about that. She was pronounced dead at the scene. The medical examiner determined the cause of death to be fatal electrocution caused by the damaged ring light. The investigation focused on the ring light, which had no safety certification, no ground fault protection, and degraded insulation around the power connection. A product safety inquiry was opened into unregulated electronics sold through online marketplaces. Investigators found the specific model she had purchased was still available for sale on multiple platforms at the time of the investigation, and identical units were being shipped without any safety testing or certification. Her parents pushed publicly for stricter import standards on lighting equipment. The viewer who told her to unplug it ended up reaching out to the family after the news came out. I chose this last one as the closer for a reason. Every other person in this video did something. A stunt, a challenge, a routine, a setup. This woman was standing on a balcony watching the sunset. That's all she was doing, and the building gave way. It was September 12th, 2019, and the sun was dropping toward the water along the Amalfi coast in southern Italy, throwing gold light across the face of a cliffside apartment building, where a woman stood on a third-floor balcony with her phone propped on the railing, streaming the view to a small following. Nalani Akiona was 34 years old, a travel nurse from Maui, single, between contracts. She was 3 weeks into a break she had planned for over a year, renting a vacation apartment on the Italian coast that she had found through a rental platform. The listing had dozens of 5-star reviews. Several of them mentioned the balcony view specifically. One review, posted 3 months before Nalani booked the apartment, described watching the sunset from that exact balcony and called it the highlight of the trip. She had this travel account with a pretty small following, and the one thing everyone noticed about it was she never showed her face. Every photo, every video, every stream was the view. Landscapes, sunsets, coastlines. The camera always pointed away from her. Her sister later told a reporter that Nalani said she didn't think her face was the interesting part of any place she visited. She thought the place was. That tells me everything about who she was, and it's also the reason the last thing her audience ever saw was the sky. That evening, she set up her phone on the balcony railing the way she always did, propped against a small travel case, camera facing the water. She had been streaming for about 10 minutes, talking about the coast, the colors, the light on the water. A few viewers were chatting. Someone asked where she was, and she described the town without naming it. Another asked if she would show her face, and she laughed and said maybe one day. She was just leaning on the railing, not sitting on it, not climbing, just resting her weight the way literally anyone would. The railing was original to the building, wrought iron, anchored into stone that had been exposed to salt air for decades. The base connections had corroded over time, a process that was invisible from the surface, but had been weakening the structural integrity of the mount points for years. No inspection had been conducted on the balcony railings in the time the property had been listed as a vacation rental. The railing gave way, not gradually, not with a creak or a warning. It separated from the wall at both base connections and folded outward under her weight. There was a short metallic sound, then nothing to hold on to. She fell 3 stories onto stone below. The phone stayed on the balcony. The stream just kept going and all the chat could see was sky. Viewers heard the sound of the railing breaking, a short gap, and then an impact from below. Several people in the chat typed her name. One typed call someone. Another typed what was that sound. Nobody knew the address of the apartment or even the name of the town. A viewer who had been following her for months later told a reporter he sat there staring at the stream for almost 3 minutes before he accepted what he had heard. The screen showed nothing but sky and the sound of wind. This is the one I sat with the longest out of everything in this video, because she didn't make a single mistake. She leaned on a railing, and that's the whole thing. She was pronounced dead at the scene by local emergency services. The medical examiner determined the cause of death to be catastrophic cranial and thoracic trauma, consistent with a fall from significant height. The building inspection that followed found the corrosion at the railing base was visible and had been present for years. The property owner had not conducted a structural inspection at any point during the rental listing. A criminal negligence investigation got opened against the property owner. The building inspection found the same kind of corrosion on 2 other balconies in the complex. The property got pulled from every rental platform, and the owner was basically banned from listing it until everything was fixed and certified. Her travel account was preserved by her family. Every post is a landscape, not a single photo of her face. Her sister said she thought about taking the account down, but decided to leave it up because that's how Nalani saw the world, and maybe other people should see it too. I think she was right.